Today we're talking about something that is about to become a much bigger conversation. The New York Times recently reported that the FDA is expected to lift the ban on peptides. If you've been on TikTok, Instagram Reels, or Reddit lately, you've probably seen someone talking about peptides. You might have even seen someone injecting them live. Now look, a couple of months ago, I made a video on peptides, and specifically Retatrutide, which is a weight loss peptide. It was showing up all over my TikTok. Influencers were promoting it, they had affiliate links, and honestly, it was looking very sketchy. But since then, I've changed my stance, and I actually took that video down. Because the reality is, when I started looking into the actual studies that are being done on peptides like Retatrutide, like GHK-Cu, there really is something to them. The results are pretty amazing. And I have a feeling this is something that is absolutely going to blow up in the next couple of years. It is going to completely change the way we look at health. Because these peptides, they go far beyond weight loss. And don't get me wrong, I still have reservations. If you spend any time going through the Retatrutide subreddit, it's actually very, very scary. There's a lot of people injecting things into their body that they do not understand at all. There are people asking questions in there that they shouldn't be asking if they're already injecting something into their body. But at the same time, I think this goes to show how desperate people are to lose weight. How many people are frustrated, feel like they've tried everything, every diet, every supplement, and they're still not getting results. And again, don't get me wrong, diet and lifestyle is absolutely key. But some of the studies I've seen on things like Retatrutide, the way that they work to control food noise, and they don't have the same digestive side effects that something like semaglutide, Ozempic does, it's pretty incredible. And it really looks like it has the potential to be a huge breakthrough in metabolic health. So in this episode, I wanted to break this down properly because over the last couple of months, I have been doing a lot of research. I have been digging into the studies. I've been diving deep into these research peptide websites, looking at these sellers, going through the forums, seeing the results. And I wanted to make a comprehensive episode that covers everything. Because if the FDA is going to make these peptides legal, I want you to have the necessary information to know if they're right for you. So today we're going to talk about what exactly peptides are, how they're different to legal drugs like Ozempic, why they're not approved yet, why they're not legal, whether or not they're safe, and everything in between. And I will have timestamps on the progress bar, so if you're looking for an answer to a specific question, you can skip ahead, but I do recommend watching the whole episode. I'm going to try to keep this pretty concise and cover everything, so by the end of this episode, you have a full understanding on what peptides are and how they work. I'm going to keep this clear and practical. Welcome back to the Healthy Not Complicated podcast. If it's your first time tuning in, my name's Kait. I'm a nutritionist. I specialize in insulin resistance and all the associated conditions that come with it. Things like prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, increased disease risk, just overall metabolic health. So I work a lot with people who are trying to lose weight, who are trying to lower their blood sugar. Honestly, a lot of people who could potentially benefit from some of these peptides based on the research I'm seeing. So that's my story, but let's get into it. In this podcast, I like to focus on a trending headline or a trending topic. So today we're talking about the New York Times article that's all about the US FDA lifting the restriction on certain peptides. And a bit of context, a lot of these peptides were legal up until 2023, at which point the FDA moved them from category 1 to category 2. Category 2 basically means that the FDA thinks they have a significant health risk. It's banned from being produced. And the news is that early this year in 2026, the FDA is going to move some of them back to category 1. Category 1 is substances that are currently being researched, that have potential, that aren't necessarily safe, but they're not unsafe. And basically, anything that's in category 1, doctors can prescribe to patients. Category 2, doctors can't prescribe. But let's step back. What are peptides? Peptides are naturally occurring in the body. They're chains of amino acids, which basically means they're small types of protein. For example, insulin is a peptide, and it's one of the first peptides that was harnessed for medical use. So people who are type 1 diabetic, their body isn't producing insulin. Insulin, it's very important. It helps to control blood sugar. Without insulin, blood sugar just keeps going up. There's nothing to bring it back down. That's usually insulin's role. So for people with type 1 diabetes, they have to inject insulin. So when we're talking about peptides, we're talking about things that are naturally occurring in the body, but we're injecting more of them for a specific benefit. The way they work is they act like signaling molecules. They basically plug into our receptors and tell our body to do something. Burn fat, release a hormone, build tissue. And there are a few different categories. Obviously, everyone is focused on the weight loss category, on the metabolic category. These include things like GLP-1s, which are legal, and also Retatrutide, which isn't legal or not legal yet. Then there's the recovery and healing category, and also the anti-aging and skin category. Some common peptides that you might have heard of, Retatrutide, it's showing a lot of promise for weight loss, lowering blood sugar, lowering insulin, improving metabolic health. Then we have BPC 157. This is sometimes referred to as the Wolverine peptide. It's shown a lot of promise for gut health and also tissue repair in studies. Then another really popular one is GHKCU, which is the copper peptide. People are using this for anti-aging. It helps to improve texture of skin, to reduce wrinkles. It also helps with hair growth. That is showing a lot of promise in the research. And then TB500, which is used for systemic healing and reducing inflammation. So those are just a few. There's obviously a lot of them, but those are some of the most common ones. Now, when we talk about peptides, GLP-1s fall into this category, which are legal. Basically, the difference between GLP-1s and some of these new ones is the number of receptors that they target. So GLP-1s target one receptor. When we talk about GLP-1s, we're talking about the peptide semaglutide. And you might know it better by the brand names Ozempic or Wegovy. This targets only one receptor. And the way it works is it slows down how quickly you digest food. So you feel fuller for longer. But as you're probably aware, it comes with a lot of digestive side effects. Now, then we have the dual antagonist, and this is the peptide tirzepatide. This one is also legal, and you might know it by the brand names Mounjaro or Zepbound. And this one targets two receptors, so not just GLP-1, but also GIP. So on top of slowing down how quickly we digest food, it also improves how the body stores and burns fat. So of course, that's even better for weight loss. A lot of studies show that people taking tirzepatide lose more weight than people taking semaglutide. And then we have the triple agonist, Retatrutide. And this one doesn't have any brand names because it's not legal yet. This is the one that people are pushing all over TikTok. I can't log in without seeing a video on it. And this hits three receptors, GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. And with the addition of glucagon, what that does is it actually increases your metabolic rate. So you end up burning more fat at baseline. People who are taking Retatrutide, or Reta for short, find that they get into ketosis faster, they are able to burn fat more efficiently, and a lot of the studies are showing more weight loss, lower fasting blood sugar, better insulin sensitivity, improved cholesterol panels, just improvements across the board. Well, not across the board. There are some catches, which we will get into in this video, but recent trials have seen people lose an average of 24% of their body fat in 48 weeks, which is the highest ever recorded in this class of drugs. So it sounds pretty amazing. And from the testimonials that I've read online, obviously TikTok, seen a lot of TikToks, but just reading through some of these Reddit threads, people say that they don't experience the same amount of nausea that they do with semaglutide. And they feel super focused. Obviously, that is a side effect of having higher ketones. And they don't lose their appetite as much. Their food noise is quiet, so they aren't constantly thinking about food, but they do still get hungry. And when they do eat, they get full quicker. So one of the issues with semaglutide is that people are so nauseous, they lose their appetite entirely, and they don't eat enough. Or specifically, they don't eat enough protein. And this leads to not only fat loss, but also muscle loss. Muscle, not something we want to lose. We want to retain as much as we can. This is super important, not only for metabolic health, but as we age, it's especially important to maintain our muscle mass. So we don't want to be losing it, and we don't want to be losing it quickly like a lot of people do on semaglutide. So from what I've been seeing in the research and based on testimonials, people find it's easier to eat enough protein within the day. Their food noise is quiet, but they are still able to eat enough to not be losing muscle along with fat. And that's all pretty incredible. Now, before I get into why peptides aren't currently legal, I want to take a quick moment for the Sip With Sodii. This is the part of the podcast where I remind you to stay hydrated and that hydration isn't just about water. It's also about electrolytes. During this segment, I also answer a question that was left on my last podcast episode. And the question I select, that person gets sent a pack of Sodii's everyday hydration salts. So if you want to be featured in the next episode, leave your question in the comments down below with the hashtag #TheSipWithSodii. Today's question is about macros, and this is something I'm asked about a lot. They asked, what would be the ideal amount of fat, sodium, electrolytes, and protein if I want to eat 75 to 100 grams of carbs in a day? For protein, would it still be 30 grams per meal that you recommend? Basically, this person was eating a keto and carnivore diet, and then they realized that they didn't need to be that strict, but they do still feel best on low carb, and they're wondering about what their macros should be. Now, the way I usually suggest looking at macros, protein should be the first thing you look at. You want your protein to be a goal. You should be aiming for 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So if your ideal body weight is 130 pounds, then you want to be aiming for 130 grams of protein per day. Now, this can be a little bit higher or lower based on your needs. You don't want to be eating so much protein that you're absolutely stuffed, but protein is super important. We already spoke about how maintaining muscle is important for our health, and eating enough protein is absolutely a non-negotiable. So protein first, make sure that's dialed in. Whatever your protein goal is, you want to match that with your fat. So 130 grams of protein, 130 grams of fat. Now, again, this can be a little bit higher if you find you're low energy, if you're hungry in between meals, and it can be a little bit lower if you have a lot of weight to lose and if you're not seeing progress. From there, add the carbs in. If you're someone who's very active, if you have performance goals, then you might need more carbs. If you're someone who's insulin resistant, if you're sedentary, then less carbs. And that's the basic framework that I find works for a lot of people without strictly counting calories and macros. Once you get an idea of how much protein is in certain foods, how much fat is in certain foods, then this becomes a lot easier to just visualize. You don't need to weigh anything. You don't need to track anything. These are rough numbers. That's the framework. Now, when it comes to electrolytes and sodium, there's a bit more nuance here and variance. If you're eating mainly whole foods, you do need more electrolytes and more sodium because, well, one, you're not getting a lot of sodium through processed food. Sodium is an essential electrolyte. We do need some of it, just probably not the massive amounts that they put in processed food. But if you've cut that out, and especially if you're eating fewer carbs, then your body is retaining less water and less electrolytes. So you need more. The exact amount, 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams of sodium is a good starting point. If you're very active, if you're an athlete, if you use a sauna, if it's summer, you might need more. And sodium's really the main one you want to focus on. If you can add in a magnesium supplement, that's going to be great too, especially if you're having muscle cramps. But start with that. I hope that answered your question, and thank you for submitting it. If you want your question answered in the next episode, make sure to leave your question down below with the hashtag #TheSipWithSodii, and you're also going to get a chance to win a pack of Sodii's everyday hydration salts. So if these peptides are so amazing, why aren't they legal? Well, there isn't enough research on them yet. That's the short answer. With Ozempic, large pharmaceutical companies put hundreds of millions of dollars into researching them and showing that they were safe and effective. But there hasn't been that big push with other peptides like Retatrutide yet. So there is some research, but not enough for the FDA to say they're safe. And none of these have big pharmaceutical companies behind them yet. But as I said before, the FDA is moving towards making some of them legal. But in the meantime, where are people getting them? Because there are a lot of people on Retatrutide. Let me tell you, a lot of people at your gym who look shredded, they're probably on Reta. It is exploding in the bodybuilding community. So where people are getting them is from research chemical websites. Basically, there's a bit of a loophole here. Pharmacies are creating these compounds, but they're selling them and marketing them as for research only. That's the catch. They say they're selling them for people to research. But of course, a lot of people who are buying them aren't buying them for research. They're buying them for their own use. And this is, again, why I said it's very sketchy. Because with something like Ozempic, you buy it, it comes in a pre-filled pen. But when you buy these research chemicals, they actually come in a powder and you have to reconstitute them. You have to add a specific amount of bariostatic water. You have to be very careful with them. You have to keep them temperature controlled. You have to buy syringes and inject yourself. So basically, people who are buying these, they aren't just the patient. They're also the pharmacist and the lab tech. And like I said, it is scary in these subreddits. How many people will have a cloudy vial and they're saying, is this safe? They didn't reconstitute it properly and they're asking questions. They mixed up the dose. They mixed up the calculations. They took too much. People aren't doing the correct research because these things can be very powerful. Do we know the long-term side effects yet? No. And that is certainly a concern. People aren't doing the necessary research they need to do. And that is why I think this is very scary. So these research chemical websites, they are what is considered to be the gray market. It's technically legal because these companies aren't selling them to be used for personal use. They're selling them for research, but anyone can buy them. And another reason why I was so thrown off when I was first introduced to peptides was because I was seeing people, just everyday people on TikTok who had started taking Reta. They were seeing results. They're posting their results. Their whole feed is centered around Reta now. And they have these websites linked in their bio. They have a promo code. They're doing affiliate marketing. They're getting a kickback from sales. And look, I've looked into a lot of these websites. Some of them look very sketchy, but other ones do look pretty legit. They have third-party testing posted on their website. They seem to be doing everything right. There's no immediate red flags. But the fact that, I guess, influencers, if you will, are promoting basically illegal drugs and getting a kickback, that did not sit right with me. Again, then I started looking into the research and I said, oh, there is actually something here. From what we've seen so far, peptides do seem safe. Of course, there's some side effects, there's some trade-offs, and we don't know the long-term effects, but right now it's looking pretty promising. When you order peptides, they come in powder form and you have to reconstitute them. They don't come in liquid form because when they're like this, they are extremely fragile. If they are exposed to heat, if they are shaken, this risks breaking down the peptides and taking away from the benefits. So you can think, if they're on a truck, if they're in a plane, they're shaking, high risk of them becoming damaged. So when you get them, they come in powder form. You have to add bariostatic water. You need to add a different amount based on what peptide you're taking, what you want your dose to be. There's a lot of math involved. When you take something like a GLP-1 that's legal, all of that math is done for you and you're just getting the pen. I don't know. People aren't doing enough research is what I'm getting at here. You obviously need to keep everything very sterile, very sanitary. You don't want to cross-contaminate anything. The everyday person doing this, that is what's throwing me off. And if you mess up the measurements, you could end up taking more than you intend. You could end up taking a dose that's 10 times as high and experiencing extreme side effects if that happens. Brand name GLP-1s, you don't have to do that. It's all done for you. Now look, if we take away all the issues with reconstituting, with messing up measurements, are these peptides safe? Short term, some of the side effects, similar to GLP-1s, some people do experience nausea, digestive issues, fatigue, but these seem to be less common than with semaglutide. So that is a pro. But of course, again, we don't know the long-term metabolic risks and health risks, disease risks. We don't know if they impact our hormones long-term and the effect that can have. So while these do seem pretty amazing, there is a trade-off. One of the common side effects of retatrutide is an increase in your resting heart rate, anywhere from, I think it's 7 to 10 beats per minute. Now, if you're anyone who has tracked the resting heart rate before, if you're an athlete, you will know that lower heart rate is generally better. It does signify better cardiovascular health. Of course, there's a cutoff. It can be too low. But an increase of 7 to 10 beats, that is huge. Another thing that there's been a connection with, I don't know if I've seen this in any of the studies, but I've definitely seen this in like threads on Reddit and whatnot, is a decrease in HRV. HRV is heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is basically the space in between your heartbeats. You want it to be more variable because that means your body is adapting in the moment quicker. Higher HRV generally means you're more physically fit, and it also means you've recovered better day to day. So a decrease in HRV, we don't know. That could be a red flag, but again, there's a trade-off here. If you have a lot of weight to lose, you might not be super focused on what your HRV is. You might be more concerned with losing weight, improving the health of your joints, reducing inflammation. Although I will say, usually a lot of these things are all connected. Now, some people do say that the spike in your heart rate only happens at the beginning. As your body adapts to the drug, it does tend to go down. Just again, going through some of the threads and people's experiences online, some people see it decrease after a couple of weeks. Some people, it stays high, and that has caused them to get off the drug because it leads to a lot of sleep problems as well, is what I'm gathering. A lot of people find it harder to sleep, and a higher resting heart rate could be contributing to that. Another thing I've been seeing in some of these threads is some people were previously on Ozempic or tirzepatide. They switched to Reta, and just different tolerances and different responses to each. There was quite a few people in the Retatrutide subreddit who were saying that they didn't feel very good on Retatrutide. Their sleep had absolutely tanked, so they were switching back to tirzepatide, which I do think is interesting. And yeah, that increase in metabolic rate, obviously, if you have a lot of weight to lose, that does sound super appealing, but we don't want our metabolic rate to be higher long-term necessarily. Generally, if we don't have appetite suppression like we do with these drugs, higher metabolic rate means you're hungrier. So a lot of people who are athletes, who are burning a lot of energy, they're working out really hard, they are also always hungry and always eating. Yes, their metabolic rate is higher, but that just means they need to eat more. Now, it's interesting here because obviously we have the higher metabolic rate, but then we have the appetite suppression. So it does sound kind of perfect in a way, to a point. Look, I've made videos on Ozempic and GLP-1s before. Basically, my thoughts on it are that diet and lifestyle is key. You can't rely on these drugs alone and not change anything else. You can't not be changing your habits, changing your day-to-day life. Because what we see with GLP-1s at least, is when people come off these drugs, they gain a lot of the weight back. Their hunger comes back. And our goal should be long-term, sustainable weight loss and good health. If we can't maintain the weight that we've lost, I mean, sure, it's good in the moment, but don't we want to maintain our results? Diet and lifestyle should be key. But what has really interested me with Reta is just people saying the food noise. And they're still eating, they're still getting enough protein, but they're just not constantly thinking about food. And this is something I can relate to an extent. I definitely use food as a bit of a distraction to procrastinate. I realize I'm doing it in the moment, and it is a bit of a battle. So it would be really interesting if I didn't have that battle, just how my day-to-day life would be different. So I do think this is an interesting tool, but like I said, not legal yet. We don't know the long-term impacts. A lot of people are not doing enough research. They're just buying it online, have no idea what they're doing, becoming chemists overnight. It's a little bit insane. I'm honestly a bit surprised that we haven't heard of anyone who's been severely, I guess, negatively impacted from these research peptides. I mean, thank God the way people are taking them, but I think it does go to show that at least short term, the benefits are outweighing the cons. So my stance has changed. There is a lot to say about peptides. They do look promising, and I am very interested in this because one of the main issues I had with GLP-1s was appetite suppression being so strong, people couldn't eat enough protein, they were losing muscle, and nausea, digestive side effects, people not making diet and lifestyle changes. But from what I've seen, Retatrutide doesn't have the same negative impact. Like I said, a lot of bodybuilders, gym goers are on Retatrutide. They are building muscle on it. They are seeing fat loss results. And they're saying Reta makes it a lot easier. So that is something I'm very curious in. And I think especially for people who have just struggled with their weight for a very long time, who haven't seen results on anything else, who couldn't really get past the digestive side effects of semaglutide, things like Retatrutide could be very beneficial. But again, diet and lifestyle changes, building habits, that is the foundation. That needs to happen alongside taking these peptides if that's what people are going to do. Now, I'm going to link to some resources and references in the description box down below. So if you want to do some more research into peptides, I know I focused a lot on Retatrutide and the metabolic ones in today's episode, but another one that I'm really interested in, GHKCU, the results I've seen for people's skin, for hair growth, those are pretty incredible as well. So if you want me to do a follow-up episode and talk more about a different type of peptide, let me know in the comments down below. If you have any other questions, leave them there as well. And remember to use the hashtag #TheSipWithSodii. If I choose your question, I'll answer it in the next podcast episode, and you're going to get a pack of Sodii's everyday hydration salts. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.